hold on. What if I told you that Mercedes has been running an illegal front wing since the very first race of 2026, and the FIA's own cameras caught it on video? And the craziest part? Mercedes hasn't even been stopped yet. 4 controversies, 3 races, 1 team. And right now, George Russell leads the championship with a car that might just get disqualified. Let's break down exactly what's happening. The 2026 Active Aero System. Okay, so before we get into the controversy, you need to understand what actually changed in 2026, because this is where everything begins. Formula One completely killed DRS this season and replaced it with something called the Active Aerodynamic System. Now, every car on the grid operates between 2 modes, Z mode and X mode. Z mode is your cornering mode, where the wings close down and generate maximum downforce, and X mode is your straight line mode, where the wings open up to reduce drag and push top speed higher. Both the front and rear wings move between these 2 positions freely. But here's the key thing. The FIA says that transition between the 2 positions must happen in no more than 400 milliseconds. That is literally less than half a second. And that limit exists for a very specific reason, which we are going to get to right now. Why that 400 millisecond limit actually matters. So why does the FIA even care how fast a wing closes? Think about it this way. If your wing closes faster, you get downforce sooner when you turn in. But if your wing closes slower, you stay in that low drag position longer into the braking zone, which means you carry more speed deeper before you finally slow down. Now imagine if a team could make their wing close fast at tight slow corners for immediate grip, and then make the same wing close slowly at high-speed braking zones to carry maximum speed further into the stop. That would be an absolutely massive aerodynamic advantage over every other car on the grid. And that is exactly what Mercedes appears to be doing with the W17. And that is exactly why this story exploded.
How it all started, the social media bombshell. Now here is where it gets really interesting, because this whole controversy did not start with a formal protest or an official FIA inquiry. It started with a single social media post. An account called DRS Unlocked published a slow-motion analysis of the W17's front wing behavior across different corners at the Chinese Grand Prix. The footage was slowed down to 4 times below real speed, and what it showed was genuinely shocking. At Shanghai's turn 9, which is a shorter, faster braking zone, the front wing snapped shut almost instantly, completely normal. But then at turn 14, which is Shanghai's long, heavy braking zone where cars are coming down from over 300 kilometers per hour all the way to 90, the exact same wing closed significantly more slowly. We're talking approximately 800 milliseconds. That is double the legal limit of 400 milliseconds. And when engineers across the paddock saw that footage, their reaction was not to laugh it off, it was to pay very close attention.
Now, to really understand why what Mercedes has done is so clever, you need to look at what happened to Ferrari, because Ferrari tried something similar and it went completely wrong. Ferrari introduced what became known as the Macarena wing in China, where the rear wing was rotating at a different rate compared to the front wing. The result was a dangerous aerodynamic imbalance through the transition phase, and Lewis Hamilton paid the price when the wing closed unexpectedly into a braking zone at turn 6 and he spun out. Mercedes looked at that exact problem and appears to have engineered a solution. By designing their front wing to close slowly at high-speed braking zones like turn 14, the aerodynamic balance migrates progressively from the rear to the front throughout the entire braking phase, rather than shifting all at once abruptly. The driver gets stability, confidence, and control through the most demanding stops on any circuit. That is the difference between Ferrari's failure and Mercedes' genius or illegal advantage, depending on how the FIA sees it. The FIA investigation, genius or cheating? So what is the FIA actually doing about all of this? Well, here is where it gets complicated. The 2026 regulations were actually written with transparency in mind, because every car's wing actuators are connected to position sensors that feed real-time data directly into the FIA's own standard ECU. So in theory, if the W17's front wing is genuinely taking 800 milliseconds to close, the FIA's own telemetry should already be flagging it automatically. The fact that Mercedes has not been disqualified yet is actually the strongest argument in their favor. But here is the gray area that makes this so difficult to resolve. The regulations define the maximum transition time between the two fixed positions. If Mercedes engineered their actuator to complete its movement within 400 milliseconds, but aerodynamic loads acting on the carbon fiber structure cause the wing to physically settle more slowly afterward, the actuator is technically legal while the wing looks illegal on camera. Ferrari have now formally asked the FIA for clarification, and Nicolas Tombazzi's office is actively examining the W17's front wing data from China. But no formal ruling has been issued yet. What happens if Mercedes are found guilty? This is the part that could completely reshape the entire 2026 championship. If the FIA rules that the W17's front wing has been operating illegally since Australia, then we're potentially looking at retrospective disqualifications from Melbourne, the China Sprint, and the Chinese Grand Prix. Russell won Australia, Antonelli won China, and all those championship points would be at serious risk. Mercedes currently leads the constructors' standings, and Russell leads the drivers' championship. A ruling like that would not just change a few results, it would detonate the entire season narrative before we have even reached round 4. The more likely outcome, though, is a technical directive that clarifies exactly how transition time must be measured going forward, forcing Mercedes to modify the system while leaving existing results untouched. 4 controversies, 3 races. And this brings us to the real story here, because the front wing is not the only controversy Mercedes has been involved in this season. There was the compression ratio loophole, the customer team information dispute, and the ADU timing debate, and now this. 4 major regulatory gray areas in just 3 races. At some point, the accumulation of these controversies stops looking like coincidence and starts looking like a deliberate philosophy of pushing every boundary to its absolute limit. The FIA has now tightened the compression ratio rules from June 1st, which closes that door, but the front wing question remains open. And with Suzuka coming up this weekend, every single corner the W17 takes will generate more footage, more data, and more pressure on the FIA to finally give a definitive answer. Because right now, the only people who truly know whether this is genius engineering or a straightforward rule breach are Mercedes and the FIA, and neither one of them is talking.